fellow Americans yesterday once again proved that democracy is the heartbeat of this nation, just as it has been the heartbeat of this nation for 2 centuries. And even in the face of a pandemic, more Americans voted this election than ever before in American history. Over 150 million people cast their votes. I think that's just extraordinary. And if we had any doubts, we shouldn't have any longer about a government of, by, and for the people. It's very much alive in America. Here, the people rule. Power can't be taken or asserted. It flows from the people, and it's their will that determines who will be the President of the United States, and their will alone. And now, after a long night of counting, it's clear that we're winning enough states to reach 270 electoral votes needed to win the presidency.
Good evening, everyone. The day after Election Day, we are still here, we're still alive, we're still fighting, and we're still waiting. I am Tara Setmayer. This is the Rick Wilson, and we still don't have a president yet. We still don't know the winner yet, but we will soon enough. We'll catch up with some of our Lincoln Project brethren later on tonight. We'll have Reed Galen, Stu Stevens, and Michael Steele joining us, so stay tuned for them. We also have a special guest tonight. She's an election law expert, Franita Tolson. And yeah, Rick, we're still alive. Have you gotten any sleep at all?
We're still alive? And what is the sleep you speak of? You know, Tara, the reality is, as we're coming onto air right now, we are very close to the moment where we're going to have an announcement, where the electoral college number, the only ball game in town that counts, is going to be out of reach of Donald Trump, where there will not be an option, even if he flips one of the big states, to pull it over to 270. So, folks, if you're watching right now, sometime in the next few hours, certainly in the next day, you are going to hear the words President-elect Joseph Robinette Biden. It is something we have worked for at the Lincoln Project tirelessly. And we thank all of you for your support and all of your encouragement as we've gone forward in this process. And this is, it's a big night for America. Last night was a big night for America. A lot of uncertainty in the air. A lot of people very nervous. A lot of people woke up very nervous. But this was a grand slam home run. He is going to achieve a monstrous popular vote victory. And that doesn't matter whether he's going to be president or not. It matters about the number of people in the country who came out and voted for Joe Biden. The electoral college number is going to be very solid. We are actually, as we go to air right now, seeing numbers slipping in Georgia. There's the remaining 95,000 or so votes are from Metro Atlanta, Metro Savannah. Those are going to be very good for Biden. He may well push over the number. North Carolina is closing up fast. Michigan and Wisconsin are out of the door already for Biden. It's going to be a good night, folks.
Yeah, so, it's where the elusive 270 is in the offing, and that's what we've been waiting for. We often say in politics, all you need is 50 plus 1. Well, here, all you need is 270, and we're right there. We're almost over the finish line for this part of it. There's still a lot of work to be done. Yes.
6 votes.
Yes. So there's our map. There we are. We should have just.
I love you guys so much on production.
I know. You guys should have just kicked over the Trump. You know, just one good flick. When it gets 270,
one good whack.
There it is.
There it
We'll
is.
practice it for when it's 270.
Rock'em sock'em candidates.
Yeah, that's right. Taking it old school. As always, we want to hear from you guys. So tweet at us, hashtag Ask the Breakdown, and we'll take some of your questions later on with the crew. And let's get right to it. And if any announcements come in, or if we get any more results, because they're expecting to get a large batch in Arizona and Georgia as well, possibly while we're on air,
Yep.
we will be sure to let you know. So, yeah, I just don't. I'm like delirious actually at this point, because there's just so many things going on, and there's like so many emotions going through me with what we've seen happen over the last 24, 48 hours. And you had Trump
Yep.
coming out last night at the White House, which was completely inappropriate for him to do this with his campaign supporters there. He's out there trying to say, well, we're going to stop the counting. It's fraud. But he wants the counting to continue in the states where he was behind, like Arizona, but stop the counting in Pennsylvania. It was disturbing to hear the president of the United States inside the East Wing of the White House actually undermine our electoral process. Nothing like that has ever happened before in this country. And it should have infuriated a lot more of the elected Republicans, who are supposed to be these, purveyors of our Constitution and freedoms and democracy here, and virtually silence, which is just incredibly unacceptable. Now, he's also trying to go out here and say that they're going to sue. They want to put this in the courts. That's not a strategy either, especially with the way the recounts, all this. That's going to work either. He's looking down the barrel of defeat, and this is a last gasp. And he's willing to try to take our institutions and our democracy down with him to do it, and that is completely unacceptable. So as the American people repudiate him and send him packing, let's remember, I thought of you last night, Rick Wilson, when he said that while I was delirious at 3:00 in the morning, as your wise words of "fuck you, keep counting," because that's exactly what we're doing.
That is it, folks. And that is what's happening in Georgia and North Carolina and Arizona right now. These states will be counted completely. I just had a report, and I've got to follow up on it shortly, of the Republicans are attempting to disqualify large numbers of ballots in North Carolina. So we'll be pressing in on that question as soon as we clear air here, and I'll get our legal folks focus in on that to make sure that we pay the attention to which it is due, and push back on that stuff, because we are not at the Lincoln Project done with this mission, folks. We always say no sleep till Biden.
That's right.
We are done with this phase of this mission, with the 2020 phase of the Lincoln Project, when Joe Biden puts his hand on that Bible on the west front of the Capitol and swears the oath of office. By that point, hopefully, they will have dragged Donnie out of the West Wing and started the fumigation and sterilization process. But so we're gonna stay on these things. We're gonna make sure that as we close in on this, there are no last-minute shenanigans that don't get pushback.
Right. I mean, we're seeing these lawsuits being filed. It's just a last gasp, Hail Marys. Rudy Giuliani running around making an ass of himself in Philadelphia, along with the Trump kids and other acolytes there, just trying to create more chaos and sow doubt into the system. The suit in Michigan to stop vote counting is absurd. They're going to try to disenfranchise military votes and, absentee voters, overseas voters, which I wish would get more attention. Shout out to Fred Wellman, who's been very diligent on that and very vocal, pointing that out, and how often Trump has done this with our military men and women. It's a disgrace. Yeah. And, the bottom line here is, in America, the president doesn't decide when votes stop counting. The president doesn't decide who's going to what states he can claim in the electoral vote. The voters decide, and that's exactly what's going to happen. And he doesn't get to say who catches up and who doesn't, and where. This is absurd. These are lies, and that's not how it works here. So, and he's going to find that out very, very soon.
Tara, Did you happen? I mean, you have to notice today with Rudy Giuliani, the president's free lawyer is worth every penny. He's in Philadelphia today. First off, saying coming right up to the line, like, what these people in these cities are like,
Right.
that nudging up to that particular hot button. But he was
people.
also saying things like, we'll file a national lawsuit against the states.
Oh, what is that?
How? What?
Right.
I'm no lawyer, but
exactly. Like, what does that even mean? It's gobbledygook. It's nonsense. And maybe that's what they do over in Russia and Turkey. But damn it, that's not what we do here in America. And you know who's going to tell us more about that? That's right. Let's bring in tonight's guest. Do we have a seg?
We have a seg. Come on, guys.
I'm waiting with bated breath for the seg.
Quiet.
There she is.
All right, well.
No seg.
Here we
It'll
go.
be later. We'll get it. We'll get it later.
We'll do it later. We'll do it live.
Yeah, F it. We'll do it live. Tonight's guest is Professor Franita Tolson. She's a professor and vice dean at the University of Southern California, where she is nationally recognized as an expert in election law and constitutional law. She's written about partisan gerrymandering, the Elections Clause, voting rights, and the 14th Amendment and 15th Amendments. And she has a forthcoming book called In Congress We Trust: Enforcing Voting Rights from the Founding to the Jim Crow Era, which will be published next year. Welcome, Franita.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
So,
thanks for coming on.
Yeah, this is perfect. Given
can I fangirl a little bit since I follow both of you on Twitter? So I'm like, hi.
Sure. Absolutely, we appreciate it. Listen, Rick Wilson's used to getting that. Someone told him he was the Justin Bieber of the Never Trump movement or something, right? What do they call you, Rick?
Yeah, Justin Bieber of the Never Trump movement.
Yeah.
I tried to hide.
We have believers here. But thank you so much for coming on. And I have a couple questions for you. And I think our audience will appreciate your expertise on this because, there is this flurry of activity going on as the Trump Titanic is sinking, and they're just trying to grasp at straws to kind of confuse people and sow chaos into things. And one of the issues that's come up repeatedly is if there's a recount or we go into a legal posture here with the results, it's a flashback to 2000. Those of us who are old enough to remember 2000, the trauma of that are going, oh my God, is this Bush v. Gore, part two? Cass Sunstein, law professor over at Harvard, he wrote a piece that said, no, this isn't about Bush v. Gore. This is not the same thing. Is he right about that? Or do we have to worry about a Bush v. Gore situation again with the lawsuits and things that we see happening?
I have to agree with my former professor here. I think that this is not 2000. So Bush versus Gore, it was a different situation. And so it's a couple things going on here. So the best case scenario for the president is probably a recount in Wisconsin. And if that's the best case scenario, it is a terrible option. Right. So there's a 20,000 vote margin between him and former Vice President Joe Biden. And recounts rarely change the outcome. So Wisconsin is not exactly new to this. They have had recounts in the past. They did a recount in 2016 and it changed absolutely nothing. And that's generally true of recounts. If you think about it, the most famous recounts that we've had are still far and few in between. So of course there's Bush versus Gore, which everyone knows, but there's also the Frank and Coleman recount in 2008, which was, pretty well known because it took months to resolve that. But generally speaking, recounts don't change the outcome. And here there's a huge margin between the two candidates that I don't think it'll alter anything.
You bring up Wisconsin, and Scott Walker, who was former governor of Wisconsin, he's tried to run for president a couple times and crashed and burned because he's terrible as a candidate. That's my editorializing on that. Even Scott Walker came out and said, yeah, not so much. 20,000 vote margin of difference, a recount's not going to do it. And if it's within 0.25%, then it's an automatic recount. But if it's over 0.25%, then the campaigns have to pay for it. Somebody has to pay for this. So that's not going to happen if Trump doesn't pay for shit. So if they have to pay for it, You're not going to see a recount in Wisconsin. I can guarantee you that. But just to put the issue of Bush v. Gore
Of course.
to bed there, that the basis for that case was that Florida didn't have a like rules basically for the recount. There was no structure there.
It
So
was
it was
very
like
archaic.
inevitable,
Yeah.
right? So that's why the Supreme Court had to finally get involved after 30 something days of this and hanging chads and pregnant chads and everything else. This is different now because since then, a lot of states have tightened up their rules on this. So we don't have a repeat of that. Is that I'm not a lawyer, but is that the proper reading of kind of the main difference between Bush v. Gore and why the Supreme Court got involved in that and why this time around it's not the same thing?
I think so yes, I do think that's correct. I do think that a lot of states looked at what happened in Florida and they said, look, we don't want to be the next Florida. But I don't know
Sorry,
if there's
Rick.
been I don't know if there's been enough change to prevent.
No apology necessary. It's Florida.
It is Florida. And to that point, I don't know if there's been enough change to prevent the next Florida. Florida could still be the next Florida. I do think things are different in terms of political environment, though. In 2000, all of the attention, all of the lawyers, all of the resources were squarely focused on one state. How many states are we talking about today? We're talking about a number of states. And honestly, that's a good thing. I know that people want resolution. I know they want peace. I know they want to know who the winner is. But the fact that we're not solely focused on one state is actually a good thing, right? And another good thing here is that we might not need court involvement, right? I know that the Trump campaign is filing a number of lawsuits, but it is unlikely that any of those lawsuits will be outcome determinative in the way that Bush versus Gore was. The Pennsylvania case, for example, the Trump campaign has filed a lawsuit to intervene in already existing litigation challenging the ballot extension deadline. And even if they win, it is entirely possible that Joe Biden doesn't need Pennsylvania to win the presidency, right? And so I just feel like our posture here is a little bit different than it was in 2000 and a little bit different, but in ways that are definitely consequential.
Former RNC chairman Michael Steele, friend of the show, Lincoln Project senior advisor, I was talking to him not too long ago about the Voting Rights Act, and because I've been paying very close attention to voter suppression and the underhanded tactics of the Republican Party, and studying kind of the history of the consent decree that the RNC was under starting in 1982 for some of the shenanigans they pulled with voter suppression efforts in my home state of New Jersey. And that was removed in 2018. And then you also have had, of course, the Shelby v. Holder, which removed some of the pre-clearance portions of the Voting Rights Act in 2013. These are different things that have basically opened the door for Republicans to do some underhanded things again. And Michael Steele said that when he was chairman, and because that consent decree was something that was over the Republican Party for decades, that when he reviewed it, he said that he didn't think that that section of the Voting Rights Act should have applied to only those few states. He said that it should have applied to all 50 states. That was 10 years ago. A lot has changed since then. And now we've seen these erosions of voter rights protections. Do you think that that's made any difference in this election?
I think it's made a huge difference. And in fact, I got really annoyed when I was looking at the lines in Georgia in the first days of early voting. And everyone's like, oh my God, people are so enthusiastic. And I'm like, no, that's voter suppression. Right? and let me explain why. Because Georgia was covered under the Voting Rights Act when the Supreme Court invalidated a portion of the pre-clearance provisions in 2013, which, as you mentioned, Tara, are the provisions of the Voting Rights Act that required certain jurisdictions to pre-clear any changes to their voting laws with the federal government before those changes could go into effect. And invalidating that provision, that was basically an invitation to the former Confederacy to engage in systematic voter suppression and voter disenfranchisement. So what we've seen in the years since the Shelby County decision is that covered jurisdictions have closed on average 20% more polling places than non-covered jurisdictions. And so people are waiting in line, not because they're excited, they're waiting in line because since 2013, Georgia has closed a number of its precincts. And these precincts are located in disproportionately minority areas. And so I think, and I just want to make one other point, because I think this will get lost. Once a winner is declared in this presidential election, this will get lost. We have to continue to talk about these issues, right? And part of the reason this is important is because whenever we make it through, i.e. the American political system does not implode, we immediately stop talking about all of the problems that led to our concerns in the first place, right? So if somehow Vice President Joe Biden emerges as the next president, then voter suppression and voter disenfranchisement is going to take a backseat, and all of a sudden we'll be focused on the midterms. And so I think it's really important to continue to have this conversation, because one of the reasons why we are facing litigation in multiple states and recounts in multiple states is because our infrastructure sucks.
Well,
Franita, I think
true. Go ahead,
I think you that's the technical term. But you wrote earlier this week that you weren't worried about Tuesday, but more about Wednesday. And so give me a quick summary, given where we are right now, about 6 electoral votes out, what you think could go wrong in either direction in the next 24 hours, as we look at hopefully landing Joe Biden here in the next little bit. So I'm just curious what you think could go. I'm a cynical guy at heart, so I'm curious what you think are like the worst case scenarios for the next couple of days.
So some of the worst case has already come to pass, but there are some bright spots. My concern was about, if the president loses, what will his rhetoric be? Number one, and number two, how will his supporters respond? And a third concern related to that is, what do we do with all of the negative precedents that's come out of this period? Right, the U.S. Supreme Court has had to weigh in on some of these election disputes, and they've resolve these cases in ways that are not very protective of the right to vote. We have to live with that after this election cycle. So that's a concern I will continue to have. But even more present, I have this concern about the president's rhetoric, where he, would come out and declare victory, as he did, right? Where he would cast doubt on the outcome of the outcome of the votes in certain states, which he has. So that has definitely come to pass in some ways. But one thing that I've been pleasantly surprised about is that people on both sides of the aisle have pushed back against this in ways that I think are really important and will be helpful in days to come. Because I don't think we're out of the woods. I think it is entirely possible that we could still see some violence as a result of the outcome of this election. And maybe I'm pessimistic. And I hope that I'm wrong on this, but I think we just have to be vigilant. And in many ways, the president, his actions in recent days have been very, very dangerous. That when you think about a country is at its weakest when it has an election. And so the rhetoric of our elected officials is especially important during that time. And he has failed that test miserably. And so that's why I was afraid about Wednesday, because I knew no matter what happened on Tuesday, he laid the groundwork for Wednesday to be fraught and dangerous and contentious.
Yeah, that was my fear. I worried about that. This scenario was kind of other than him winning, this was the next fear that I had. I always say that I had agita about what would happen, because Trump has been telegraphing this for months. And
Sure.
No one has really condemned him for it. Every once in a while, someone here or there might send out a tweet, the Republicans to go, oh, well, we need to make sure, we have free and fair elections and we'll have a peaceful transition of power. But there's never been a real full rebuke of this guy. And so why did anybody expect that he would do anything less than what he's done today? So what happens moving forward makes a huge difference with how people view our institutions and our elections, because a representative republic doesn't work if the people don't believe in the institutions. And that's what's at stake here. And I don't know that the American people really get that enough. It's alarming to me in a lot of ways. But here at the Lincoln Project, we've talked often about the need for a new Voting Rights Act. Obviously, this election has uncovered a lot of problems. As you said, the infrastructure sucks, and the type of voter suppression efforts that we've seen, something needs to be addressed. What would that look like to you? What kind of, what do you think we could get maybe through Congress, or what would a new Voting Rights Act look like? What would have to be in there?
So there are actually bills out there that I don't think they go far enough, but I do think that they are a good start. So HR 4 passed the House, and it is, of course, dead in the Senate. But it did pass the House, and HR 4 would reauthorize the Voting Rights Act in part because it would tie it to more recent violations. One of the biggest problems that the Supreme Court had with the prior Voting Rights Act coverage formula is that it was based on old data. So it's based on data from the 1960s and 1970s. even if it did a good job of sort of targeting those states that were the worst offenders, it was based on outdated practices like poll taxes and literacy tests. So the new formula would tie pre-clearance to more recent voting rights violations. The problem is that the scope of that would be really like 4 or 5 states, mostly in the South. And one thing we've noticed in this election is that voting rights violations, as Rick has pointed out, is something that is a nationwide problem. So it doesn't go far enough in that sense. And so we need to come up with something that's more expansive and would cover states like potentially Wisconsin, that would prevent things that happened in Pennsylvania to some extent. So we need to think about criteria that would capture states in the North that have also been bad actors in recent years.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. Rick?
Yeah.
Truly. You know, I think one of the things that you mentioned that Tara, that you mentioned about, you know, the Lincoln Project advocating in the future to sort of strengthen the sinews of our republic and our democracy. You know, things like a revised Voting Rights Act that reflects the current circumstances in the country, things like election security bills, things like providing the states with some resources, and frankly, the money is de minimis in comparison to other things, to give our states, you know, the ability to have a consistent, secured voting system in this country is something that I think anyone, you know, regardless of party, should want. People shouldn't, I mean, this uncertainty we have every single election cycle, and this hodgepodge of systems and this hodgepodge of methods that we use. I mean, Franita, don't you find that, I mean, isn't that something that lends itself not only to, you know, friction and uncertainty and public doubt, but also to hacking and manipulation and everything else, because we don't have a standard in this country for voting machines and voting systems and the distribution of polling places, et cetera.
So we want to have it both ways, right? We want to point to our decentralized system as a plus because it makes hacking our system more difficult, right? You can't hack all 50 states at one time.
Right.
I hope not, right? Right. But we push back against uniformity for this reason. But you can't have it both ways. You have to have some uniformity in order to make sure that that legal votes are counted in a way that, you know, votes don't fall through the cracks because jurisdictions have machines that don't work or they don't have enough machines. But at the same time, you also provide money to jurisdictions in order for them to make sure that their election systems are secure. What we saw this past spring was really a travesty, right? Congress only allocated $400 million for elections for states to have elections in the middle of a global pandemic, which was not nearly enough. It needed to be somewhere in the neighborhood of $2 billion. And when you think about what we give to our military, and, you know, I know you guys are Republicans and you love the military, so just bear with me. We're literally asking for like 3 airplanes. Give us 3 bomber planes, put it in an election, right. We'll be happy, right? Like, there's no reason for us to not fund our elections when we fund everything else so excessively. And so we can't have it both ways. So you can't have election security. And in fact, some states have been targeted by foreign countries. But you can't have it both ways. You have to put money in. And the states can't do it on their own, especially in this economy where they're trying to stay afloat because of the pandemic.
Yeah. And, you know, when you have the Senate Majority Leader, Mitch McConnell, actively obstructing election security bills and funding like he did in the run up to this, with the threat of potential foreign interference and hacking into systems and to help shore up the system, with the red flags and warning signs were there. And Mitch McConnell was like, no, we're not doing it. It's like, why would anyone not want to do that? And then you look now where we are, and this could be why. Because if it's close, or there's a way to manipulate it, or a way to, manipulate the perception of what's happening, that's the way to do it. Same thing with the post office. You know, this was never an issue before. Since when? Well, you screw around with the post office, then you delay votes, and then here you are. Oh no, stop the voting. They shouldn't be, a deadline shouldn't be extended. You're like screwing with the post office. It's insane. And so, regardless of who wins, we're confident it's Biden, but those enablers, we're still coming for them. So anyone who wonders where the Lincoln Project's going to be after this, there's plenty for us to still do. Franita, before we let you go.
Franita,
go ahead.
Can I pop one more question here?
Yeah.
Franita, I am not an attorney, nor do I play one on TV. But I noticed today the president was declaring victory in several states on the Twitter machine. I just want to make sure for our audience, those have no force of law, right?
No, Rick, actually it will be the equivalent of you declaring that you're an attorney, right? Like
Okay.
it has no legal impact. But
I am officially now an astronaut. I have declared it.
Yeah, but 60 million people didn't vote for you, right? So that's really the point of concern.
Right.
The point of concern is that when he makes these declarations, they do have force with the people who cast ballots for him. Just like he's,
Sure.
When it came to conceding the election, he's like, well, I don't know, and then everybody's all up in arms about the peaceful transfer of power. But the reality is that a concession has no legal force either. It's more so concerned about the response if he does refuse to concede. Will his voters accept the legitimacy of a Biden presidency? Will his voters think that he actually won the list of states that he just shouted out where we're still counting, right? Like he just does these things that we know have no force, but it may matter on the ground.
And that's why he does it. And that's the power and danger of propaganda. And he's been doing this from the very beginning. And the fact that it's taken a foothold like this with over 65, 70 million people who voted for this guy is just extraordinary. But we'll be dealing with this for years to come, I believe, because this sentiment isn't going away. These people aren't going away. And before I let you go, on CNN today, you said something that made sense. It struck me. You talked about the importance of let's normalize patience as we are continuing to count. Rick Wilson was a little bit more forceful in his keep counting instructions last night. There it is. There's the hashtag. But I was really interested in the way you phrase that. Like we need to normalize patience. There's a lot of other things that we've been warning that we shouldn't be normalizing. Yeah. But what as we're leaving, what words of wisdom in the realm of patience do you have for people who have some anxiety about where this outcome is going as the count continues?
So a few reminders. In the last 5 presidential elections, including this one, the winner has been declared on election night exactly twice. Perhaps this is also our norm, right? A lot of what's happening now is a reflection of the fact that we are polarized. It's not the first time and it won't be the last time that we've been a polarized electorate. And when we are polarized, our vote counts are as well, right? So we have more states where the electorates are more evenly split. And when that is the case, it takes longer to count. That is not a sign of dysfunction, or it's not a sign of fraud. It's not a sign of illegitimacy. It's just a sign of our politics. And so that one of the important things about letting the process play out is that it reflects where we are as an electorate. So we may not know who the president is today. We may not know tomorrow, but that doesn't mean the system is broken. And even if we have to have a recount, that too is part of the system, right? State law, almost every state law provides for some variation of recount. There are a few that don't, but for the most part, having a recount is also a part of the process. So don't look at delay as a sign that the system has completely broken. To be clear, the system is broken for other reasons, right, many of which I've articulated here.
Yes.
But the fact that we have a system in place that may take a little bit of time to resolve disputes around who the president is not a sign that the system is not working. So that's what I meant when I said normalize patience, right? Because we're spoiled. We want to know immediately, and,
right.
And the system is not set up for that.
And we've been trying to warn people ahead of time to be prepared for this. Don't freak out if we don't have, a traditional, so-and-so is the winner. We've been trying to alleviate that anxiety, but it's tough when you have so much going on with this crazy president and his people. It's a lot. Yeah, it's a lot. Yeah. But we're here to help alleviate that, to help reassure people, arm them with facts about it, and bring experts like yourself on so that people can understand what's happening and their questions can get answered. And I believe that we have a audience question for you, if you don't mind, before we let you go. Throw it up there. Okay. Ask the breakdown for the professor. What can be done about the United States Postal Service intentionally not following a judge's order to sweep post offices? The net result was that many mail-in ballots sat in their post offices rather than being delivered on election day. Is there anything to do?
So
Great.
the postmaster general can be held in contempt, which I hope happens, because I was just like, can you do that? I am a lawyer. You can't do
Right.
that.
I was curious about this, just to give a little background for people who don't know. So Judge Sullivan in D.C., who got a lot of headlines during the whole impeachment and Paul Manafort and all that, he said, listen, these ballots, I think there's 300,000 of them. They were processed into a postal facility, but they weren't scanned out, which means that they are somewhere in postal facilities. So he ordered that they be swept and that these ballots be found and processed. The Justice Department came in and said, nah, we're not doing that. We're not going to change our schedule. The post office can do it themselves. We have our own inspector general and postal inspection crew. We'll do it at our own schedule. I was curious, can they justify a federal judge's order like that?
No,
No.
they can't. But
so who would
let
hold
me
them in
tell-
I
contempt?
love how blunt you are about it. No.
Yeah.
No. Oh gosh, no. But let me say a word about the affected voters, because I think that's a part of the narrative that gets lost. They really have no recourse. If you look at the way the Supreme Court has approached these issues, we had a somewhat similar issue in Wisconsin in the spring, right? The argument in Wisconsin was that the ballot deadline should be extended, in part because there were voters who requested a ballot and did not receive it in time, right? And so the Supreme Court said no, because the Supreme Court did not want ballots that were potentially postmarked after election day to count, right? So very, very similar thing here. The delay is on the post office, but
Right.
and we're in a situation where these voters presumably did everything they were supposed to do, but it's likely that there's no recourse here because we're past election day.
I can't wait for all of this to be over with, where rule of law actually matters, respect for the courts and institution matter with a new administration. USC
Yes.
Professor Franita Tolson, thank you so much. And be sure to check out her book
Thank
when
you,
it
Franita.
comes
We'll
out.
talk again.
Yeah,
Thank
in
you.
Congress We Trust, which will be out early next year. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So Rick, we were just so excited to talk to Franita that we forgot to do our Biden recap. So let's do that now.
The Associated Press calling the state of Arizona for Joe Biden.
This is a major fraud in our nation.
Georgia is getting a little bit closer. You see right now 50.3 to 48.5.
To me, this is a very sad moment.
This race is still very much up in the air.
We were getting ready to win this election. Frankly, we did win this election.
The critical Rust Belt, still too early or too close to call in many of those cases.
They want us to declare victory tonight, be ahead tonight, because they know that those mail ballots are going to hurt them.
So NBC News can now say that Joe Biden is the apparent winner in Wisconsin.
Guys, this is fraud. This is absolute fraud. They're trying to make a mockery of the election of this country.
Stealing the election! The media's covering it up! The Biden crime family stealing this election! The media's covering it up!
Do you think we're stupid? You think we're fools?
Biden has got to be feeling pretty good about what's going on in Michigan.
The black vote in Detroit is highest than it's ever been, and we will determine the outcome because we've gone from picking cotton to picking presidents.
Michigan will go to Joe Biden.
You know, just a slow day at the polls as we're counting votes and figuring out who our next president is going to be. What a shit show. You know, before we bring in our Lincoln Project brethren, I want to make an announcement. And this is something that I've been wrestling with for a long time. And I have made a decision that after the culmination of everything we've seen over the last 4 years, after the way that this president has behaved, the way that the Republican Party has abdicated their responsibilities and made a mockery of their oaths of office, how the party has turned into a party of white grievance, hypocrisy, apparently voter suppression is part of the playbook now, no regrets, authoritarianism seems to be okay, conspiracy theories, racism, misogyny, indecency. These are things that are completely antithetical to everything that I believe as a conservative and everything that I fought for as a conservative Republican for the last 25 years of my adult life. And after last night, I always said that I would reassess my role in the Republican Party depending on how this election went. I was cautiously optimistic and hopeful that there would be a repudiation of Trumpism, and that would give Republicans like myself, the sane ones, an opportunity to possibly rebuild and have a role in trying to root this out and build the party anew. It's clear to me, after almost 70 million people voted for a sociopath, that the Republican Party is no longer something I can associate myself with. I'm done. I'm out. Wow. You know, our colleague Tom Nichols wrote an excellent piece in the Atlantic today where we were simpatico in this. He left already, but he reemphasized the point that almost 70 million people in this country voted for a sociopath. And Donald Trump last night in the White House actually sounded like a two-bit dictator, making declarations about our system and things that are completely against what all of us who are in the Lincoln Project and those of us who were disaffected Never Trump Republicans, we do not stand for that. And we used to be the party that believed in it. We were the party of Reagan, right? Where freedom was only one generation away. We were the ones that were supposed to be the bulwark. We were the ones that were supposed to yell, "Stop athwart history," as Bill Buckley used to say. We were supposed to be the sentinels in the watchtower. Where has that gone? It has gone to support a sociopath, malignant narcissist who has brought in authoritarianism in a way that it should be dangerous to this country and a threat to our future. So that is something that I no longer want any parts of. I will be an independent until now. I'm still a little C conservative. My belief system and worldview has not changed because the messengers are fallible. But I'll tell you something right now. My fight moving forward is part of this pro-democracy movement, and it's to do the right thing. Because here in America, right still matters. And that's where the fight will continue for me. So that's that. That's what I wanted to say. That's my announcement. And it's a new day.
Woo! God bless, Tara. Love you. Love you so much. I know that took it was a big jump, but welcome. The water's fine.
The water's fine.
It's so.
I just couldn't. I couldn't do it anymore.
I haven't gotten teary-eyed this whole year, and I think I just did.
Right, Reed got teary-eyed.
I got teary-eyed, and
Reed
Tara,
just teared up.
I don't have feelings, so this is a big deal.
Right, this is a moment. So allergies.
To be honest with you, you know what, Reed? I did too just now. You know, it's I look at our country and I don't recognize it, and it's I've always been a natural fighter for what's right, and there's so much work to be done. And all of us will play a role in that. And it's an honor to fight alongside you guys. And I'm ready to get to work. But it will not be with an R next to my name anytime soon, if ever again.
Amen.
Amen.
All right.
Bless.
On that note, geez.
Okay.
I need a shot.
All right. Well,
you
know how you should leave them wanting more? I'm not sure we're going to improve on that.
Okay, so, that's it for tonight, folks.
Yeah, good night, everyone.
Just kidding.
Michael Steele is here with us, too. Michael snuck in with us. And Michael, you and I have had this conversation. You know that it was coming for me. Wait, you're muted. You're muted.
Yeah, I was drinking. Sorry, guys. This runway has been a long time in the making. Well, congratulations. I'm still that lone son of a bitch on the porch with a lamp. So
I'm sorry I had to leave you, my
That's
brother.
okay.
I
understand. No,
there's been a lot of times where I just couldn't do it anymore. There's just nothing left for me to see that's redeemable at this point. So, but I'm happy to support you. But I think you may be not far behind me. It's one of these days.
I was going to say. My runway is probably a lot shorter than people realize. So, don't get that too twisted. No, I think it's a hard step. It's a hard step, and I think, Rick put his finger on it. it's not something, and a lot of people think, oh, you guys are just doing this, trying to da-da-da. It's just, 25 years of your life, believing in something with people who believe the same thing and who you knew would stand with you. And it's hard when they walk away from you. It's hard when they leave you standing by the road and say, you better find your own way, because we don't want you with us anymore. And it's in your statement, your testimony, as we say in church,
That's right.
is really a reflection of what happens. People always tell you, I did not leave my party left me, because of that, the nature of that attachment. It is an initial engagement, it becomes a marriage, and it's a long-term relationship. You're in it, right?
Yeah.
And then you realize, oh, damn, you're a son of a bitch. And then you're like, I'm out of here.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Well,
to shout out to Stu Stevens. He wrote the book that really was almost the final
He
straw
did.
for me. It was all a lie.
did.
Stu, that book was one of the toughest reads, because it forced me to have to reevaluate the 20 plus years of my life, of the things that I fought for, and thinking, I was doing it because I always believed in empowering people. And, as conservatives, we wanted to empower the individual and smaller government and ways that ladders of opportunity, the mantra. And I look back and I'm going, was it all a lie? A lot of it felt like it. And looking at people who are unrecognizable today, friends of mine, people who I consider family, that I fought these political battles with, are unrecognizable today. They have sold out to this sick, twisted Trumpism that is, it's just, I can't do it. So, but Stu,
well, that,
Can
I offer testimony to that as well? Because I think a lot of people really in some circles undervalue, and a lot of circles really don't appreciate what you wrote, Stu. They really don't. Because I know for me, in reading it, I had to look back and think about, when I was national chairman. And fortunately, some of the stuff they were bringing to me was so off the wall, it was easy to go tell them, what the hell, I'm not doing that. No, we're not doing that. But then a lot of it in truth was very subtle. It's how you manipulate around the edges, is how you, create a false narrative, that you're trying to stimulate a reaction. And mostly it's the wrong reaction. And now the party's paying a dear price for that. So I do very much appreciate your book, and I think it should be a read for every fucking member of the United States Senate who's a Republican, and every fucking member of the Congress. And the first copy I would sign and put in the hands of someone like Jim Jordan and Lindsey Graham. And just tell them, your punishment, motherfucker, is to read this for the next 50 years.
That's right. That's right. From the words of the chairman himself, Michael Steele.
Because it makes sense.
You're right. And to Michael's point, fellas, there wasn't the repudiation we thought there would be last night. That was the final pushover for me. It's just that the repudiation wasn't there. And some may have been a bit more optimistic than others about how much of a repudiation it would be, but it never should have been this close. We've got 100,000 cases of COVID today. 100,000 cases of COVID, a global pandemic. People are dying. There's a body count now. And 70 million people said, we don't give a shit. This is insanity. What are you reading from the results that we see so far, as tight as it is? Reed, what is your read out of this? No pun intended.
Well, look, I sent a message out on Twitter to my new Democratic friends that they should enjoy this moment. Because I think at the end of the day, this is going to be quite an extraordinary achievement, actually, for Biden. So he's going to end up getting more votes than anybody else in the history of the country. They're going to flip Arizona. They're going to flip Wisconsin, flip Pennsylvania, flip Michigan, and well, may flip Georgia, which is I think extraordinary. I thought it was going to be much bigger. I fall into the category of I thought that we could win Florida. So I think it's really disturbing in that sense. But it's the first, and it's not sufficient, but it's necessary. And I think that the degree to which the country is going to change now, when you just think about it, young women now are going to have this role model of this African American prosecutor, AG, senator, vice president, who has this like infectious laugh and is just wicked smart. And that's going to be their role model instead of a guy who says that didn't rape a journalist because she wasn't his type. And I just think that the magnitude of the good that does for the country is just impossible to overestimate. And you look at Texas. Once Texas goes Democratic, which it will, that's it for Republicans.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just a short walk until the Republican obsession becomes abolished in the Electoral College.
Right.
Yep.
Because you're not going to be able to win, and that's not very far away. So, it wasn't the clean sweep. I hated to see Lindsay win.
All of us.
There's a lot of heartbreak in there, but there's a lot of triumph. I mean, you guys will appreciate this. In 1976, we started federal funding of presidential races. So both nominees got the same amount. And that went on to 2008 when Obama blew the system up. In that system, Carter lost and Bush lost. So you have to ask yourself, we don't have that anymore. When's the last time an incumbent president lost who wasn't in the federal funding system? And the answer is Herbert Hoover. And now it's Donald Trump. And it just shows how difficult it is to beat an incumbent president without that leveling of the playing field.
Right.
Reed, can you hear me? Let's what are you thinking? What are your thoughts in this moment as Biden is on the precipice of winning, and we'll have a winner declared hopefully soon. And it's amazing we have Donald Trump out here who just doesn't seem to understand how elections work and tweeting out crazy stuff, namely things that he can't control, which is his mantra. It's his MO. What are you thinking in this moment right now as we are this close to finally ending this nightmare?
Well, a couple of things. One is right before Stu and I came on the set, I was scrolling through my Twitter feed, and the military has put a temporary flight restriction over Joe Biden's house. It is now national defense airspace, which means that while he may not actually be the president-elect yet, there's sure some people who believe he's going to be and are taking appropriate steps, which I think is heartening because we know the system in itself is working. I think also, I was very early on. I was gut punched by. I was convinced this thing was going to be over by 10 o'clock. Right? Which camera? I'll look at any one you want me to. All right. And so
intimate now, Reed.
Right. Just give me sad. So now what I see is, I think that to echo Stu's point a little bit, like we don't have a center right party anymore. It is whatever Trump says it is, and I would be interested to hear what the chairman has to say about this, and Tara, you as well with your experience on the Hill, is that it may be harder for some of these Republican senators to navigate Donald Trump while he's outside the White House and outside the constraints of the institutionalization, for lack of a better way to put it, that the Oval Office provided all of us in its own way. Now he's going to have his own TV show and his own podcast and this and that. And he's going to, he'll be off the hook. The keyboard cowboy will be out on the range. And so I think, it's going to be, half of the Senate's going to want to be the 2024 presidential nominee for the Republican Party. So they're going to hew to that line. And I think that's going to be, Schmidt had this idea that, in a repudiation scenario, the Republican Party became this dwarf star that got hotter and, denser and smaller. I think now we're in a place where the Republican Party became like a supernova. It exploded, and its radioactivity is all over the country, and we're going to have to clean it up. And I think it's going to be a lot of work. It's going to be a lot of work on everyone's part. And I think that, you know, certainly we're not going anywhere.
No.
And I think some of the things we had in mind, frankly, assumed a repudiation in a Democratic Senate. That's not going to happen now. And so, you know, we'll go back to England. We'll get some rest and relaxation, and we'll get ready to jump again. So I'm excited about what's coming, and I can't wait to be able to call Mr. Biden Mr. President-elect.
And you know, it's one of the things that we were talking about today, Schmidt and I were talking about earlier today, and Reed and I and Stu this morning, was, you know, we went out there and we said, we're going to try to hit a grand slam home run. And that would have been a full repudiation of Trump at the ballot box with a 400, you know, a 1964 sweep, removing the Senate majority, and having such a large number in the popular vote that it sent a real message to the country. Well, guess what, folks? We didn't hit a grand slam home run, but we had 2 guys on base. It went out back over the back fence. We're very happy with what the modeling that we did in states like Arizona and Wisconsin and Michigan, where we put a lot of work in, where we put a lot of resources in, and the model that the Lincoln Project is building and is going to expand on as we go forward, this model of trying to push back against this authoritarian version of reality, this Trumpist version of reality, is one that we're going to carry forward. And the mission and the vector against Trump's enablers and against the corrupt elements of the Republican Party that have protected him for so long, that's going to go forward. You know, Mitch McConnell's going to have a 1-seat play here. And we've got work to do in Georgia. We may have two bits of work to do in Georgia as things develop, where it looks like if about 10,000 more votes come in, we're going to see Purdue slip below the runoff
50%, yeah.
So, you know, there's a lot of work to do. And look, we've been proud to be a unique part of this fight, that we got out there very early. We pushed out there in ways to try to set the narrative in the country, to try to motivate people, to try to get people engaged and excited. And we modestly think that a lot of the stuff we did helped people realize that Donald Trump's not unbeatable. He wasn't, you know, 20 feet tall and impervious to any attack. And so we're really hopeful that we're about to see in the next few hours, at the latest in the next couple of days, those magic words of President-elect Joseph Robinette Biden. And that will make this mission all worth it. And it will be the fuel we need to keep fighting in this same battlefield for principles and ideals and the things that have made America truly great. Not a cheap Chinese hat and a blustering autocrat, but the real things that have informed and driven this country forward and bent the proverbial arc in the right direction. So,
you know, I think one of the interesting, sad, predictable phenomena is going to be all of these Republicans trying to go back to the pawn shop where they left their character and their soul. And it doesn't work that way. Once you've seen that somebody is a coward, you don't forget it.
That's right.
In the same way you don't forget it when you see that they're not cowards. And it stays with them the rest of their life. I mean, that's one of the things we were saying, you know, none of us get to pick history, but history can pick you. And they got picked, and they weren't up to the moment. And they're going to, I think, go through this period of trying to pretend that this didn't happen. It's going to be like 1947 in Germany. Like, I don't know. Were there Nazis?
Right.
What was happening?
What?
Yeah, but
like,
what's been going on?
I was Wehrmacht.
Right. Who? But the difference is that they didn't have. Yeah. What is that? They didn't have movements like ours, like the Lincoln Project and others, to hold them accountable. They're not going to be able to just scurry away without being reminded, and us there to remind them of their absolute abdication of anything respectable in their character. One of the things that we've done is we're not going to sit here and let them try to steal the election, right? This is what Trump is accusing everybody else of doing. They're actually doing lawful counting of the votes. But we have an ad out there specifically to Arizona to make sure that you're not going to try and steal this election. We're watching. Let's run that ad.
Donald Trump's desperate campaign is in trouble, and they want to manipulate this election to save the president. Close polling places, ignore military votes, throw out mail-in ballots, and intimidate voters.
I am urging them to do it.
Trump and his loyalists are fine cheating. They don't care if it's illegal. And they believe there will be no consequences. We can't let thugs steal Arizona's voice in this election.
Sent to Democrats in 4 states, threatening to, quote, come after any voter who doesn't vote for Donald Trump.
We can't let them take away our vote. And to the Republicans in Arizona, listen closely. If you help Trump's losing campaign cheat to win, you will be caught.
Martha, come on, let's go. Quick, 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 quick.
We are ground zero to save the country.
Elections have consequences. Your decisions will too. Arizona is watching. The Lincoln Project is responsible for the content of this advertising.
We have lost Tara.
Here I am. As we are waiting for as we're waiting for results, I was muted because I was choking and I didn't want to cough on camera. But I'm back now. Reed, we've got it. Biden's still winning in Arizona. We're waiting for a new announcement of some more votes coming in, but it looks pretty good for Biden in Arizona. What role did Lincoln Project play? I think we should remind folks that, Mike Madrid's not here. Sure. Usually he's the one that's telling us about this, but Lincoln Project really invested in Arizona. And that was one of the places that I think we had some of the biggest impact where we got those disaffected Republicans that had enough, the attacks on John McCain and other things going on there. Can you talk a little bit about what we did in Arizona and what we saw as far as movement, what we know already?
Sure. Yeah. I mentioned that last night when I saw that we weren't going to win Florida, that I sort of was disappointed. And the truth is that like Mike and his crew had told us that 5 weeks ago that wasn't going to happen.
Right.
And that North Carolina, frankly, was moving away from us too. So we pulled stakes there. We said, where we live in the world, we're not going to contribute the resources necessary to try and make a move there. So we pulled out of North Carolina, we pulled out of Florida, and we moved more resources into Arizona, more resources into Pennsylvania, and we put resources for the first time in serious way in Wisconsin. Mm-hmm. And that's where it looks like it ended up being decisive. And Georgia. That's right. And so, I think that what we did was we saw that we were opportunistic. I think Schmidt likes to say one of the things that we do best is we make decisions, right? We saw that things weren't moving in some of these states, and we said, let's get the hell out. There's no reason to throw good money after bad.
Yeah, it's funny. This afternoon, one of Marco Rubio's advisors was claiming that we'd spent $20 million in Florida. And I said, whack off a zero.
Right.
Because, look, we did some targeted
But you know what? Tell him next year.
Yes.
Oh, don't worry.
We might spend $20 million in Florida.
But we did in Florida. We did a couple experiments in Florida that worked.
Right.
We flipped Seminole County because we were able to turn out Puerto Rican voters in a way that even the Democratic Party didn't quite get to. Obviously, the state they fell short in that. And we were able to flip military voters, which helped us win Duval County, a bright red county where Jacksonville is located. And look, folks, we don't have the resources of $1 billion campaign, so we have to pick and choose our targets. And as Reed said, if we see that it would break the bank for a marginal effort where we can go and play Moneyball elsewhere, which is exactly what we did with Arizona and Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. And folks, when Pennsylvania finally comes in, I'm going to hold my confidence on this. We did a lot of work with African-American pastors in Philadelphia and the collar counties around it. And we think that as those early and absentee votes come in from that area, that is going to pay a big dividend.
Right. And just to finish on Arizona, Tara, I mean, it wasn't just, we going back to May, when we did some early research there because I think Martha McSally was our first U.S. Senate candidate.
She was.
And we actually went after the 10 wealthiest zip codes in Maricopa County and said, where are they? And they were definitely soft on the college-educated, upper income side. And so we went into that. We also went, obviously, with Mike and the Latino coalition we built. We went in there. We actually went after LDS voters, Mormon voters in Phoenix and northern Arizona. We advertised in things like the Deseret News, which is basically the paper of record for the church. Right. And we also know that there's a lot of Californians, right, a lot of coastal Democrats and even coastal Republicans who were coming into the state, and that we're going to change the tone and tenor of what Arizona was. And then, the president, might have frankly cost himself the race by just continually bashing John McCain, who is a national hero and obviously an icon in Arizona. So, I mean, we saw that we could play in the places we could play, and I think that was always I like the Moneyball analogy, is we didn't do everything, we did the things we could do well.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Something that we do well is answer questions. Let's throw up some tweets from our audience and get some questions answered here. Okay, Mulford tweets, given that Dems made excuses for Hillary not winning in 2016, like the Comey letter, Joe has outperformed Hillary's performance barely, but it's not the blowout Dems were looking for as a Trump repudiation. How entrenched is Trumpism, and is it permanent? Who wants to take that one on? Well, I think I already addressed how I feel about it. Go ahead, Stu.
Yeah, I'll make one point that the chairman can particularly appreciate. There's this other Republican Party out there, and these governors. Mm-hmm. And so you look at the three wildly successful Republican governors in blue states, right? Charlie Baker, Massachusetts, Phil Scott, and who was reelected without campaigning yesterday. I mean, he literally did not campaign, and what an overwhelming victory as a Republican in a state that was called 5 minutes after it closed for Joe Biden.
And is also represented by Bernie Sanders.
And by Bernie Sanders,
right.
Yeah.
There's a lot of Bernie Sanders, Phil Scott voters, believe it or not. And Larry Hogan in Maryland, right? So I work for all those guys. I love those guys. They can't pick their own state party chairman because the state party's so Trumpy.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, that's just, to those of us that came up in the party, I did a successful governor can't pick your chairman. I mean, it's insane. I mean, it's like saying Bill Belichick has to call like Mad Dog to get permission to send in a player, we'll do like a poll. It's just, and that just shows how deeply corrupted the party has become with this. And, one of the things that I really think we need to push back on are these myths that the Republican Party is trying to build here out of this. I saw Josh Hawley tweeting about this, that now we're the party of working class and multicultural party. I mean, look.
What is he, high?
Yeah, get the hell out of here. Multicultural, my ass.
I know, as there will be more QAnon members than African Americans as Republicans in the House of Representatives.
Yeah, say that again, Stu, because I don't think a lot of people appreciate what you just said.
Well, they're in the next Republican House of Representatives, there will be more QAnon members than African Americans.
There are no African American Republican members of the House. None. But guess what? No. There's a racist in the 25-year-old from North Carolina and 2 QAnon lunatics in Congress now.
Yeah. And so, if you look, Trump lost those who under 100,000 income. He won some of the white working class. But I just think it's important that we not let Republicans sort of live in this fantasy world. The more money you made, the more likely you were to vote for Trump. It's just that simple. So the party really hasn't made these watershed changes. I don't think that there's a desire to. I don't see any vibrant, anti-Trump element within the Republican Party that could challenge one of these candidates who are going to run, who are just going to try to prove that they're more Trumpy than the other. Mm-hmm. It's just not a market
Michael Steele, come on. You're the lone one left here for us.
No, I think Stuart's put his finger on a very important point. And the reality of it is, that entrenchment has been occurring over a period of time. If you look at the makeup of the 168 is what we call the national chairman from each state and the national committee woman and the state chairman from each state and the national committee man and national committee woman from each state. Those folks are hook, line, and sinker into this Trumpian mindset. And there may be, some of the old guard, sort of the establishment folks who who want to still control the money and have their fingers in certain pots. But the broad swath of these members are all for Trump. I mean, when he was like, okay, we're going to take the convention and move it from North Carolina to Florida, they said, okay. I can assure you that if I had even thought about moving the convention, even after I had, had a hand in picking where to put it, they would have shut me. I mean, it would have been brutal. It would have been brutal. So the fact of the matter is they've given themselves over to that. But I think the other thing that's important to look at and to recognize is the other thing that Stuart said, because irrespective of the political activists, the political leadership are the ones who ultimately have to take control and responsibility for the direction of the party, because they're tying in the policy, they're tying in the ideas, and they're implementing that through the legislative process, the executive leadership here at the White House. And when that system is broken, you get what we've seen for the last few years. I remember one battle royale I had in one of the senior meetings, and I'm there in the room with McConnell and his senior leadership in the caucus, and they're talking about all this stuff, and I'm like, fellas, that's not what's happening outside in America. I can't take that message and put it on the street because nobody's buying that shit. Well, saying that got them upset. I understand. I was impolite in the moment. I got it. Then Lamar Alexander, who I supported for president when he ran, imagine me in a fucking plaid shirt, but I was there. I was a trooper. All right. My guy,
Lamar.
Prince George's County, Maryland, right? Oh, okay. I was there. But we're sitting
Lamar.
in this meeting, and so Lamar leans over, he looks at me and he says, well, Chairman, you don't do policy. And I looked at him, I said, well, someone has to, because y'all ain't.
Oh my gosh.
And that's when I made the decision. But that's when I made the decision to get on a bus and spend 45 days traveling the country to rally the troops around what I thought the winning message would be, to make the closing argument to the American people. And it was not spending my time in front of a stilted platform or podium talking about Barack Obama and his birth certificate.
That's
and
right.
That's what
and it was successful.
Chairman,
let Reed pop that.
Chairman, may I ask a question? How many Trump family members do you think they can stuff onto the 4th floor of 310 First Street Southeast?
They will all have a room. They will all have a room. And look, I've already heard, because we elect a new chairman in January. All right. It'll probably occur a week or so after the inauguration. The party elects a new chairman, and you know who Trump is putting up?
Oh my God, who?
Corey Lewandowski.
Don Jr.
Corey Lewandowski.
Yeah.
Oh.
Don,
of course it is.
Don,
the fighting leprechaun.
So, but that to your point, about Trump and the Republican Party, that if that occurs, it cements the deal.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite Corey story is when he was with the Republican Party in New Hampshire and he debated a cardboard cutout of the Democratic candidate for governor, and the general consensus was to cut out one.
Oh my gosh, Corey Lewandowski. I recently.
I mean,
Corey,
I just.
Go ahead. I was just going to tell a funny story
about
Corey, but go ahead.
No, but I was going to say, to get rid of these people, the Jason Millers, the Corey Lewandowskis. I mean, that in itself, will be a cleansing. But go ahead, Carl.
No, that was enough to make me want to leave the party. For God's sakes, these guys, they're these loser deadbeats that are wannabes.
Yeah.
That are being elevated into positions of power and in positions in the party and making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year is insane. These are third-rate losers, and they're bad people. And this is who the next RNC chairman is going to be. We went from Michael Steele to them.
Well, I should also say, Tara, that I think that I don't know a lot about the future, but I have a pretty good feeling that if there are some folks in corporate America who thinks that it's a good idea to elevate these people to senior positions within their C-suites, that it will probably work out poorly for them.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's just I can't see the future, but that's just like how I feel.
But I can help. We can help make the future.
Well, yeah, yes. We make our own.
There are a lot of law firms right now who are about to dig very, very far into trying to help Donald Trump steal this election, and all of them have corporate clients. Want to break a little news here, folks. Right now in the Georgia runoff, we are 0.17 percentage points from Purdue going under. By a little back of the envelope math, if John Ossoff racks up 1,350 more votes, we will have a dual recount or a dual runoff in the great state of Georgia. And Trump is now at 30,000 votes. He's got 30,000 votes, and everything that's coming in is Metro Atlanta and Metro Savannah. Those are going to be blue votes, and it's going to get real tight in Georgia.
Remarkable.
We will definitely be in recount territory.
Let me just say that if Biden wins Arizona and Biden wins Georgia and it's close in North Carolina, then Mike and his team and the new Southern strategy, the Sun Belt strategy, is going to look pretty darn smart.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
sure is. Sure.
And don't forget Nevada. Nevada's hanging out there. With their 6 electoral votes, and I think Clark County, which is the Las Vegas area. Feel good about that. Yeah.
I feel good if you're in a 10,000 difference battle in the great state of Nevada. The Culinary Union is a good ally to have.
Just go to Searchlight. You'll find the votes.
Yes, you will.
Shout out to my friend William McCurdy, who just won his re-election out there as a county commissioner. Good for you. And to my good friend Jevin Hodge, who is an up-and-coming, amazing young politician out there in Arizona. He won a supervisor position in Maricopa County, and he's like 25. That kid's going to be a congressman one day. Remember that name, Jevin Hodge. He's amazing, well-deserved, and I'm very proud of him and his efforts out there. All right, let's take one more tweet. Yes? Rick, it's for you.
What's the over-under on the Melania divorce petition? Well, the problem for Melania right now is she's realized in the last several months that her large prenup was an IOU, and so now she's in a moment where she has to balance the chance of any kind of payout with the reality that she's going to be trapped in Trump Tower in 60 days with him, and it's a hell on earth.
I will say, I don't know what she got in her prenup, but it wasn't enough.
Right. I hope it was a lot of cash up front.
Yeah.
I mean,
man.
one of the sweet...
Didn't she renegotiate it?
Things is, she did supposedly, as reported, demand a renegotiation of her prenup before she would move into the White House. Her mama didn't raise no fool.
Nope.
Yeah, well, clearly. Look at where she came from and where she ended up.
One of the things I think that we're sort of going to begin to wrap our heads around, the word that is going to be most associated with Donald Trump the rest of his life is loser.
Yes.
Yes.
One term, loser.
Excuse me.
And
correction.
I just don't know if the current Mrs. Yes.
Correction. One term, impeached.
Loser. Impeached. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. There it is.
Thank you, Chairman Steele. A word we haven't heard in a while that should have been, I think, brought up more often, that he was impeached, and rightfully so, and why. But it doesn't matter because he's an impeached loser.
Do you think that Governor Kristi Noem of South Dakota will make a small, sort of Mount Rushmore, but only with presidents that have been impeached and Richard Nixon, just sort of as an honorary member,
Right.
give it to Donald Trump.
Yeah, as one would, right?
Yeah, right next to Andrew Johnson. What company? What great company to keep there, Donald Trump. Get your statue though. All right, fellas. We got to wrap this up, and as we call it a night, are there any last words that you guys want to give to our viewers, because we will be taking a little bit of a hiatus? What words of wisdom do you want to leave with our viewers as they navigate the next couple of days without us? And we'll make it quick, like a lightning round. Reed, I'll start with you.
Yeah, don't go far, because we're not going far.
Stu?
I would say thank you. There's been an extraordinary outpouring of support here that made the Lincoln Project possible. And we're deeply, deeply humbled and grateful to everyone who was part of that.
Folks, I want to echo what both Reed and Stuart said. We are still in this fight. It's going to be a long one. We are here for 2022. We're here for 2024. We're going to push forward to be what we hope will be a movement, to a pro-democracy movement in this country that's going to span a lot of the old partisan lines. We're going to go after a lot of the things in this country that have broken our politics and our society, whether it's in politics or media or digital. We're going to work hard to build a country that is deserving of the legacy that our founders and generations who have fought and sacrificed and led and died believed in. So with that, my thanks to all
Chairman
of you.
Steele, Michael Steele doesn't get a final word.
Shiza. Sorry.
Mine's real.
Yeah, all right. I was winding up there, Tara.
I know. I was going to have you go last, Rick, but you just couldn't. You just had, you had to get it out.
Boom, boom, boom. Here we go,
right.
down the set.
No worries. Go ahead,
let
Michael
me
Steele.
wrap with one more brief thing. Again, to everyone who has been so supportive of the Lincoln Project, and folks who felt motivated or felt like we, helped you stay sane or stay focused or stay in the fight. You have empowered us in ways and blessed us in ways I can hardly express. And I am deeply grateful. All right, now you take it, Michael.
You got it. You got it. And actually, Rick, that was perfect for what I'm about to say. We are all pirates, baby. Arr.
Yeah.
Indeed. The fight continues. And thank you guys for joining us tonight. And usually we have a call to action, but we're gonna seg into our final remarks of the night.
This is a fraud on the American public.
This is an embarrassment to our country. We were getting ready to win this election. Frankly, we did win this election.
We didn't get to this tonight, but if you saw today, Donald Trump was tweeting up a storm, all kinds of nonsense, and Twitter censored him. They slapped on the warning label that what he was saying was factually not true, and basically ignore it. So there you go. Some of the content shared in this tweet is disputed, and there were multiple ones like that today. So at least there was some semblance of responsibility by the social media organizations trying to make up for them being the purveyors of a lot of propaganda and bullshit throughout this entire thing, right, Rick? Facebook being your favorite.
5 years late, but I'll take it now.
Right, we'll take it now. Thank you to
folks. We'll be back next week.
Yes, we will. We will be back next week, and we're going to thank Reed and Stu and Michael Steele, as well as our guest earlier tonight, Professor Tolson, for helping us get through some of the legal stuff of this. And yes, we will be back next week. And normally we have a call to action, but tonight our call to action is something quite simple. Take a breath, say a prayer, smell the roses, just relax. We will get through this. We have gotten through it to this point. We are here still, so many of you can still come to us, the Lincoln Project, and we will help you, usher you through this time of transition. But I suspect that by the time we come back next week, that we will be able to say, President-elect Joe Biden, Vice President-elect Kamala Harris, history will have been made, and we will begin anew with our pro-democracy movement. And we're going to continue to fight for freedom and have fun doing it. So, Rick, if you have any last words to take us out.
Tara, it has been a true pleasure working with you on LPTV the last couple months, and I can't wait for us to go forward to do our next set of adventures on our little streaming channel that could. So thank you again, and God bless for tonight. That was a great moment. I'm so proud you shared it with us. I'm so happy you shared it with us, and I love you. And we'll see you next week.
Where better to do it than here?
Dear Donald, we at the Lincoln Project just want to say it's okay.
Okay.
Seriously, we know you did your best.
But that was the original.
But this whole being president thing isn't for everyone.
No, get those lights off! Off!
It's the hardest job in the world.
Lucky I brought some notes.
And it takes a lot of qualities that you just don't have.
You're going to be fair.
Like compassion, human decency.
If you don't mind, Mr. President.
Come on.
And basic reading skills.
Yosemites.
But don't worry, you've got so many other qualities.
Beautiful.
Like dancing. Kind of. Actually, forget dancing. But you're great at remembering things.
Person, woman, man, camera, TV. Thank you, everybody.
And I'm sure your kids are going places. So don't beat yourself up. Not everybody can be a two-termer. Well, this guy was. Oh yeah, that guy too. Okay, ignore that. It doesn't matter, because losing doesn't automatically mean a loser. Or a failure. Or a national disgrace. Who even said that? Not us.
That's really bad reporting.
Well, okay, we did. And do. And will for a long time. And yes, most of America will come to the same conclusion.
We're last, meaning we're first.
And sure, historians will document you as being a blight on America's presidential legacy. And yes, future generations will refer to you as that turd sandwich that accidentally won an election one time.
And you'll develop turd, like a turd mentality.
But hey, at least you're rich. Am I right? Right?
In Joe Biden's America, China would control our drug production. We'd be one step closer to government-run healthcare. We wouldn't just be unable to keep our doctors, we'd be lucky if we could see any doctor.
I won't even ask you about the hydroxychloroquine, but I took it. I took the Z-Pak also, and zinc.
Hey guys, hope you're doing well. Just watching my algorithms get crushed. I guess I did something to piss off the Instagram gods, so hopefully you're seeing this stuff anyway. We'll do what we can. Talk to you soon.